Over Britain and Ireland's garden fences lie some of our best-kept secrets.
Oh my goodness!
And the gardeners that tend them are a unique breed.
You can guarantee if you've got a big one, someone's got something a bit bigger.
In each episode of the series, 3 gardens will be explored and appraised.
They're looking at the lawn. Oh no.
I am green with envy.
And their owners will share their passion and knowledge with their peers.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a jacuzzi, isn't it?
Ultimately, they'll choose the garden they believe to be the best.
Just shooting the competition!
It's better than sex, isn't it?
You can't say that.
Welcome to London. The UK capital boasts over 3 million private gardens, and thanks to its very own microclimate, Londoners can grow tender, semi-tropical plants as well as the usual hardy species. But space in the urban jungle comes at a premium, so gardeners have to be creative and original with their green spaces. The sky-high Kensington Roof Gardens is an extravagant example of making the most of a tricky city plot, and Kew, home of the Royal Horticultural Society, has numerous displays of rare and spectacular flora. But how will our London gardeners fare with their own urban spaces? They'll be throwing their gates open to each other over 3 days, and will each hope to impress their guests and see their garden deemed the best. They'll judge garden design and maintenance, their host's knowledge and their overall experience of the day. The winner will take home £500 in prize money and the Show Me Your Garden golden trowel. The first garden is in Winchmore Hill, North London, and belongs to retired paediatrician Malcanthy and her husband David.
My garden is like a canvas. The planting and the flowers are the painting, but it's always an ever-changing painting.
In this 9 by 27 metre south-facing garden, a cosy patio with a koi carp pond is softened with clusters of containers. Stepping stones lead across a lawn flanked by mixed borders. At the back lies a sunken garden where Malcanthy's passion for foliage overflows.
I think the sunken garden for me really epitomizes my fascination with leaf color and leaf shape and leaf texture and the way they grow. That's a sedum, which has been there for about 40 years. Spireas, fuchsias, I don't know the name of that. That's a myrtle.
When this grandmother of 2 retired from medicine 12 years ago, she set about channeling her energy into her garden. Her trademark became containers. The mini vistas of succulents on her patio are her way of creating immediate interest.
I like to use pots because when I get interested in a certain type of plant like the succulents, I have an area where I can display all of those at the same time. We are forming little vistas all over the place, all with slightly different themes. And when people come into the garden, they don't see the whole garden in one go. They see little bits.
When they moved from Sri Lanka 40 years ago, the passionate pair of gardeners inherited their green corner of the capital from David's father, and since then they have transformed it into a lush retreat. But retired electrical engineer David hasn't been allowed to rest on his laurels.
I'm the assistant gardener, really, who carries out the what Malcanthy really likes to do.
This is our stream. I said to David one day, let's dig up this concrete path and put in a stream. And he said, what? And then he said, that's the most impractical thing. Then he thought about it and he said, I think we can do it. And I just love it.
The couple's gardening obsession has been noted by the family, including 17-year-old grandson Shanik.
My grandparents really love their garden. They like to bounce ideas off each other and just see how they can improve it. I would like it if they could spend a bit more time on me as much as they would spend on their garden.
It's just days until Malcanthy and David open their garden to the scrutiny of their guests. While the man of the house tidies his pond, Malcanthy is perfecting one of her mini vistas.
Well, what I'm doing is another one of my experiments. I've had these stone and now I want to fill the little holes with these sempervirums. I'm hoping that my guests will enjoy my little landscapes and vistas.
The first couple to inspect Malcanthy's container and foliage garden will be former advertising executive Edwina and her husband Nigel.
I'll be looking for passion. I'll be looking for the personality of the gardener being expressed. Some interesting plants, interesting planting combinations, and love, yes.
Our second couple are retired art teachers Marek and his wife Barbara.
This is my usual role when Max got his secateurs out.
They have no hard and fast rules when it comes to judging other gardens.
We're open-minded, and I think it's only when you're presented with something that you can say whether you like it or you don't like it.
Malcanthy and David's open day has arrived, and with their guests almost at the garden gate, the anticipation is mounting.
Well, they're about to come into the garden now, and I'm feeling a bit nervous because I'm sure everyone has these most fantastic gardens, and I am a little bit nervous about their reaction.
Edwina and Nigel have arrived armed with the Green Book. Inside is a welcome statement Malcanthy has prepared ahead of the tour.
Okay, let's have a look what it says. I consider the garden my canvas on which I paint with the changing hues of foliage. We welcome you to walk on the grass, smell the flowers, talk to the fish, and look down at the bottom of the garden.
Our two teams of garden guests meet for the very first time.
Hello, I'm Barbara.
I'm Edwina. It's nice to meet you.
Hi.
Nigel.
Both couples can award Malcanthy and David a maximum of 50 points each, with a combined score out of 100 revealed at the end of the show, when the winner will be announced.
Oh, very pretty. Lovely first impression, isn't it? It really is.
I think it's gorgeous.
That's very impressive.
God, they're enormous fish. They're like sort of gold sharks.
I find fish that big slightly creepy at close quarters.
I do think this is a good idea, though, the Alpine garden, because that looks good at any time of the year, doesn't it?
It does.
I think they like my containers. I sure hope so.
That's very impressive.
It is, isn't it?
It's sort of something volcanic about it.
Yes.
Yes. Look at those. They've grown right into the...
Yeah, look at that one, right underneath
right into
there.
The, oh, yes.
Yes. Cheeky.
I need some of this.
Having got to grips with Malcanthy's succulent mini vistas, the guests turn their attention to David's handiwork.
I think that this is coming from there. You've got a rill coming down. I don't know how far it goes, but it might...
Up the back
I
there?
do believe
I
it
think
goes
it's
right
up
down the
there.
garden.
Yes.
So we might find there's a kind of, you know, a whole Lido or a waterfall or something down there.
Maybe they've got beach umbrellas and cocktails and...
So Marek's going to get his cosy out and have a suck up there.
Absolutely.
Should we actually walk on the stones?
Because they said walk on the lawn, didn't they?
Malcanthy's borders are next, where she's combined blooming specimens like dahlias and hydrangeas with foliage-rich perennials.
The planting is really very meticulous, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How they've managed to get all these flowering at the same time.
It's like Chelsea, isn't it, really?
It is a bit Chelsea, isn't it?
I think the planting of the borders is very precise. The plants are treated individually, so it's like a patchwork of planting.
It's extraordinarily tidy. The only thing that's happening in this soil is the odd stone here.
I mean, there's a lot of pleasure, a lot of love that's gone into this garden.
Maybe this reflects the personality of the people's...
I'm sure, yes.
I think they're enjoying my flowers. They're actually touching them. And I think they were smelling some of them, as I instructed them to.
One comment I would make, though, is I do find it a little bit distracting that the nursery labels have been left on quite a few of the plants.
I keep all my labels in a tin and hope I can remember which plants they refer to.
As the tour continues, underhand tactics rear their ugly head as men are pitted against women in a mini vista challenge.
We pinched this one.
I think there's something rather nasty going on.
And Edwina and Nigel highlight potential hazards in their urban sanctuary.
And this is the one pond you haven't fallen into, isn't it?
Yes, but there is time.
Garden guests Edwina and Nigel and Barbara and Marek have almost reached the end of the first garden, but there's one surprise left.
Now, this is very unusual.
Yes.
A sunken garden, you don't come across those very often.
Because you cannot see the sunken garden till you almost come up to it, I suppose they were not expecting it. Perhaps they were wondering where the garden ended.
This is a really nice intimate area, isn't it? Where you could sit and read.
And the foliage works well, doesn't it? And the shape of the epimediums and the fact that they change colour and the colour of the brunnera leaves is very attractive.
There's a great backdrop up here, isn't there, of all this greenery. It's very artfully placed.
It is.
They seem very keen on having things in pots, but what it's allowed them to do is it's allowed them to stagger the pots. So you've got raised bedding going up into the foliage of the big tree behind it.
With the tour coming to an end, Malcanthy and David's guests record their scores before meeting their hosts for the first time.
Hello, welcome to our garden.
Hello.
It's lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Yes.
It's just so nicely put together. The thought that you've given it is immediately apparent.
Praises sung and tea sipped, our guests have the chance to test Malcanthy on her gardening knowledge.
We noticed when we were looking round the garden that you've made extensive use of containers of all different kinds, and we were sort of speculating as to why you've used so many.
It's not a conscious thing, you know. I go there and I look at that and I think, oh, that's absolutely beautiful. Those three things together will look lovely. Then I look for a pot that seems to suit it.
Malcanthy's final chance to gain points is by sharing a garden secret or skill. The standout features in her garden are the mini vistas of succulents she's planted up in pots, sinks and rocks. She wants to show her guests how to transform an old bit of driftwood into something special.
As you've noticed, I've got little mini vistas all over the garden, which I've created with succulents and with stones. And I'd like to share with you some of the tips that I have used.
Malcanthy soaked the driftwood for 24 hours. Then, using a sharp safety knife, she scores channels into the wood.
Make little spaces so you can plant in there. So you're making little pockets.
Malcanthy set the boys against the girls in this challenge. The teams use a 50-50 mix of compost and sand to provide a free-draining base for the plants to root in.
Do you have to sort of push them in quite hard, or do they...
I push them in quite hard till they go in.
There's a little gap there. That might work quite nicely.
Part of the family that includes cacti, succulents are so called because their fleshy leaves hold water, which means they flourish in the driest and most unlikely spots.
The trouble with these, if you push them too hard, the leaves begin to break, don't they? Because they're so soft.
But I don't think you need to worry too much about that, because they grow back quite easily.
Having exhausted their supply, it's not long before the ladies set their sights on the gent specimens.
We've pinched this one.
We've got to use it. We're obliged to use it. Yes. We nicked it from the chaps.
I think, you know, when it's us versus them, there's something rather nasty going on. You know, my beloved wife, who insists that she has not got a competitive bone in her body, what I thought was quite interesting was the way that she did actually surreptitiously nick the very one that I was going to put as the finale in the piece, and I looked and it's gone.
With both teams successfully completing the challenge, it's up to resident expert Malcanthy to judge who's on top.
Dead heat, absolute dead heat.
I love Malcanthy.
You are the whippers.
You might find the odd bit of driftwood appearing in the garden now. Possibly.
Or not.
As their open day draws to a close, Malcanthy and David glean an insight into what their guests thought by reading the comments left in the Green Book.
What was your first impression on seeing the garden? A delightful patchwork of colour and texture, the lower garden near the house had an intimate feel. Enormous care is evident in the arrangement and planting of the alpines and succulents. Yes, that's a fair comment, I think.
Yes.
Because that's what I've wanted it to be. What would you do to improve this garden? Remove or conceal plant labels.
That's one of the things that I thought we had to do and couldn't get round to doing in time.
Malcanthe's lush displays of foliage have been achieved by combining a variety of leaf shapes and colours. For similar effect, try the coral bark maple. The young yellow leaves provide an explosion of colour in spring before turning a lush green in summer. For a contrasting effect, try Fatsia japonica. This evergreen shrub has large palm-shaped leaves that provide a dramatic and exotic touch to any setting. The second urban garden is in East Finchley and belongs to retired advertising executive Edwina and former journalist Nigel. The couple have 3 grown-up children between them, but the new baby in their life is their 3-year-old garden, designed to be a sanctuary for all seasons, away from the hubbub of city life.
I come into my garden as a place of refuge, a place of solace, a sanctuary, and at the risk of sounding totally pretentious, spiritual refreshment.
God, that was so pretentious, actually.
It was, but it's true.
Edwina and Nigel have divided their 20 by 6 metre west-facing sanctuary into 3 outdoor rooms. The first contains a pond and cobble paving. Through an arch, there's a dining space, and the final room contains an all-seasons border.
I work very hard to have something in it all year round. So there's evergreens, there's trees, there's bulbs. The first thing that you'll see is the pond, and we've had ponds in our past 3 gardens, but I couldn't do them without Nigel because he's the one who got out here with the shovel and dug.
You didn't have much choice, really. I'm really the kind of muscle-bound oaf in this relationship.
Nigel makes a huge contribution to the garden.
And this is the one pond you haven't fallen into, isn't it?
Yes, but there is time. There is time. He does the fences, the trellises, he's done the rose arch. He created the shed absolutely from scratch.
It is a fair division of labour.
Yes, it is.
Because you get quite sort of iffy if I suddenly start showing too much interest in
Yes,
garden.
I do have a certain proprietary attitude towards the garden, I admit.
Yeah, right, okay. Good.
I don't shout at him all the time, only occasionally.
Bearing witness to Edwina and Nigel's green-fingered relationship has been their youngest daughter, Charlotte.
I think as a team, my mum and dad work really well because it's a way that my mum can legitimately boss him around. My mum's the brains, my dad's the brawn.
When Edwina and Nigel moved here from neighbouring Muswell Hill 3 years ago, the garden was no more than a patio and lawn. They ripped it up and started again, and the result is an urban sanctuary with year-round interest. The latest addition, an all-seasons border Edwina planted a year ago, is a true representation of her planting ethos.
This area is one of my absolute favourite areas. It's the height of the plants, it's the colours. Once everything is over, there is still form and shape. There's the grasses, there's the teasels, there's the begonias, and it's that reassurance of the renewal that is so important.
The open day has arrived, and as the guests approach, Edwina is feeling the pressure.
You know, you want them to enjoy the food, you want them to enjoy the day, to feel relaxed. And so I was awake half the night, being anxious about it.
It's Barbara's turn to read the welcome statement from the Green Book.
We have thrown out the rule book when it comes to gardening and have allowed our 4-season sanctuary to evolve into a series of complementing spaces. We hope you will find our garden as inspiring as we do.
As Edwina and Nigel's garden tour continues, Malcanthe is inspired to rip it all up and start again.
I think I might go home and dig up my lawn now.
And there's a hairy moment for Marek.
I'll have to start shaving somewhere else.
Our merry team of Londoners are about to tour Edwina and Nigel's all-season sanctuary. Their guests will have 3 outdoor rooms to inspect: the pond and paved area, the shady dining space, and the all-seasons wild border at the end.
Ah.
Well, my first impression is these wonderful lines of planting.
It's just wonderful, just wonderful.
Well, it's overflowing, isn't it? I mean, I just sort of get this feeling that everything's kind of flowing towards us.
Yes.
It's just like rising up out of the garden.
Which
and
it was quite a
just sort of-
surprise, actually.
Yeah.
I just love the way that there is no lawn here, and it's been so thoughtfully planned out. I think it's brilliant. I think I might go home and dig up my lawn now.
With the guests enthused, they follow the garden path to explore the first of the 3 outdoor rooms.
This is very
That pond is-
interesting.
It's
a little
completely
pond, yes.
secluded.
Can't hardly see the fish because there's so many leaves in the pond.
Yes, there's a lovely variety
Yes.
of pond plants here, aren't there?
Yes.
And I love the white buddleia.
It's so natural.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm looking at their body language and thinking, actually, what's that saying? And they seem to be enjoying it. A lot of fondling of plants and picking things up, which I think is very healthy.
Wow, it's a little private area.
Yes,
Yeah, there's a
I know
big
whose
chair.
chair
There. Who do you
this
think
is.
that's for?
Well, I think it's for me.
Ah,
Yeah. Sitting in.
excellent.
There you go.
It's very
Yes.
comfortable.
Is it comfortable?
It's wonderful, really wonderful. And you can't see the pond. Maybe I'm too short.
But this is exactly what a London garden is for, isn't it? So that you come back from work and you can just lay back and
relax.
smell those flowers,
Yes.
look at the sky.
Absolutely.
It is the most comfortable chair in the entire garden, it has to be said.
Having soaked up the relaxing atmosphere in the first half of the garden, the guests will now scrutinise the social dining area with the all-seasons backdrop.
Oh, well, we are in another room, and I love the way they've done this with different flooring in each of the 3 rooms.
The use of the gravel and the bark here really adds to that sort of country type of feel. You know, there's kind of a nonchalant way that this has all been arranged, as if it's all happened by accident.
And it's interesting how they've all been separated with planting.
Yeah.
That has given the idea of the separations.
This combination here of the Bonarensis and the teasels is absolutely inspired.
It was so effective to see the bare stems and the seed pods. So I've been completely inspired.
Look at this, look at this. What is this?
Yes.
What is this?
Oh, that is so delicate.
This looks like an LED display.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely
Most
beautiful.
extraordinary plant. I've never seen this before.
No, and so delicate. It feels so much like a sanctuary here. You're hidden away. You can sit on that lovely curved chair and just contemplate the world.
I love this garden. It's got great plant selection, it's got intimacy, and yet it's got that casualness that you associate with the English country garden on a small scale, and it's great.
With the tour complete, our guests jot down their marks before the hosts join them in the alfresco dining room, where head gardener Edwina can explain her gardening ethos.
The whole idea was to create the series of areas of what is a typical London long, skinny garden. So as you walk down the garden, it's not the geometry of the garden which is most striking, but the things that are in it.
As well as their garden, the hosts will also be marked on their gardening knowledge.
So I see here, Nigel, you've avoided the cliche of men mowing lawns.
Yeah, it wasn't deliberate. It was simply the fact that the lawn was almost irrelevant, and with a sort of long, narrow London garden, you know, lawns tend to dominate, and it just made more sense to have a nice seating area.
When it comes to winter, what does your foliage do? What does your flowers do? Where do you get the colour from?
Well, when we're really in the depths of winter, there are evergreens. I mean, these cordylines, the grasses keep their seed heads, yes. The teasels keep their seed heads. So there is stuff happening in the winter.
The final way the hosts can earn points is by demonstrating a garden skill. The secret to Edwina's garden is planting for all seasons. With a sharp eye for quirky containers, she's going to show her guests how to combine her two loves by layering up a reclaimed tub for a display of colour all year round.
And here we have everything we need, I hope, for making perfect and beautiful containers.
A useful trick is to actually, rather than filling the whole thing with compost, which A is expensive and makes it very heavy, just put polystyrene, break it up, which is quite fun, and put it in the bottom. So that creates a layer. It can drain through as well, and it means you're using less compost.
Once the polystyrene base and compost have been added, mix in water-retaining granules to prevent the container drying up during hot spells. The first ingredient for the planter is spring bulbs.
I got crocuses and iris reticulata for the early spring, and I got some tulips for later on in the year.
Add the larger, later flowering bulbs first, in this case, the tulips.
Obviously, the tulip bulbs are going to come out after the crocus bulbs, so you can put those much further down.
Dress the top of the all-seasons container with summer flowering fuchsias, and for autumn-winter foliage, add ivies, ferns and grasses.
Don't you think it's about time you...
I'll have to start shaving somewhere else.
And finally, hardy flowering annuals like pansies and violas give a burst of colour over winter.
For the violas, I'll just take these dead heads out. You just snip them out like that, and then, you know, you'll get more and more flowers off them. They are such good value, and they are so pretty.
So you see, what every garden needs is a Nigel to shovel the organic matter into place.
Because you are full of organic matter. You've both done a really good job, and now all I have to do is find the spaces in the garden to put them, and then my dear husband can carry them for me.
Edwina and Nigel's open day is over. They're left with the Green Book to read the comments their guests made about their sanctuary.
What was your first impression on seeing the garden? This beautiful garden echoed all the sentiments expressed in the opening statement and lived up to all our expectations.
Oh,
it's nice, isn't it?
I think I might cry. That's lovely.
What did you think of the design and planting? Attention was given to colour combinations so that as you progressed you came across moments of deliberate design.
Very nice. What can I say?
Well, that's what I keep
lovely.
That's what I keep telling you, and you don't. What do I mean? Shush! I keep telling you that, and you don't believe it. And there it is. You see, so it's not just me.
To achieve a garden for all seasons like Edwina's, opt for feature plants with more than just summer colour. Evergreen shrubs are a great starting point. Pyracanthus sapphire rouge blooms white flowers in spring, followed by bright orange berries in autumn. For something more spectacular, try the sun-loving Cortaderia celloana, more commonly known as pampas grass. The silky plumes can reach up to 3 metres high, so plant it somewhere with room to flourish. The final garden is in Lee, south-east London, and belongs to retired art teachers Barbara and Marek.
The theme of the garden is a fusion of Romanticism and Classicism. Can you say?
Well, mixed with the English country garden.
Yeah.
The combination of design styles is evident as soon as you step into their 15 by 40 metre south-facing garden. A climbing rose softens the back of their house and sets off an English country scene. The theme continues with herbaceous borders framing a lawn onto a feature box parterre enclosed in a 9 gazebo as the focal point. A line of symmetry runs from top to bottom through a pair of junipers that draw the eye through to a romantic foliage-filled snug.
This is a typical kind of Italian sort of feeling with the tall junipers. And then you look straight through with the statue of the faun.
And it's so green with the way the ivy has grown up over the structure of the bricks. It's worked very well.
Inspiration has come from their love of travelling, a pastime that has dominated their lives since their daughter left home and they retired. They've worked hard to bring fond memories from their globe-trotting adventures into their grand design by using classic artefacts and features.
Symmetrically opposite is a wall fountain, and we're in between. We have the pergola.
Actually, I want to call it a gazebo.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Right.
Despite the formality, not everything in this garden has been perfectly planned. Some of it has been down to luck.
This is the gazebo found on the internet. Where we were incredibly lucky was that it matched exactly the 8 openings in the parterre. How? I don't know, but it did.
The box parterre and the ornamentation create quite a scene, but this is in stark contrast to what was here before Barbara and Marek wielded the magic wand.
We arrived here in 2000, and really what we had was a big empty field. What did we have? We had an opportunity.
14 years ago, the artistic couple started on their symmetrical design, planting the box parterre from scratch and bringing in their classical paraphernalia.
We love our garden because it's us. It's what we've created together. I think it just reflects our relationship.
With 4 days to go until the guests inspect their patch, Marek is making some last-minute snips.
Right, here's the fearsome weapon that Barbara dreads.
When Marek comes out into the garden with his secateurs, I feel quite nervous. And I find myself following him around just to see how much he's going to cut off things. Marek, what are you doing?
Only what's necessary, Barbara. Anything else I can cut?
Barbara and Marek's big day is here, and the guests have arrived armed with the Green Book.
Our garden is a culmination of our travels together. We are inspired by foreign places, classic cultures, and a sense of history. We hope you find the garden packed full of surprises.
As the final garden tour gets underway, Nigel has a pint-sized job in mind for Malcanthe.
You probably need some little munchkins, little gardening munchkins.
Get me a safe ladder and I'll be up there trimming away.
And the garden guests discover who'll take home the golden trowel.
And the winner is...
The final open day is underway at Barbara and Marek's home in southeast London. Their guests are ready to take their first peek at the classically themed garden. The features to look out for are the lawn with English cottage-style borders, the box parterre enclosed in a 9 gazebo, and the foliage garden at the bottom.
Just look at this.
Gosh.
That's
beautiful.
Wonderful.
I am green with envy.
Perhaps we should all come and live in South London. Big houses.
You've got the fountain there, and directly up the garden there's another fountain as well, which you don't quite notice, but everything is...
Are they in line?
Yeah,
There?
they're in line.
Whole wall is covered with planting, and it's so effective. It softens the whole back of the house.
What have they got? They've got wisteria and a huge rose here.
Barbara and Marek's country cottage planting scheme continues in the herbaceous borders.
This, it feels more like country cottage.
It's very soft, isn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah, very soft.
Yes, yes. With a lot of quite, well, traditional planting,
Yes.
but very lovely.
I like this. We've got this pink jobby, whatever it's called.
Cosmos.
Cosmos, okay.
Yes.
I knew that.
It's beautiful at this time of the year because it will go flowering on until October, probably, won't it?
And look at the nasturtiums that have been planted with the blue geranium and the sedums coming through. I think that's a lovely patch of colour there. They said that they had been influenced by their travels, and I was looking for exotic plants, but it looked so much like a beautiful country cottage planting.
From the English-style borders, the guests now move on towards the form and structure inspired by foreign fields.
They're just moving up to the parterre now.
Yes, I hope they appreciate the pruning skills, the exactitude.
Oh, I like this. This is very nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
very
beautiful.
nice. It's very Italianate, isn't it, with the pergola and all the topiary.
I'm sure that all this is inspired by their travels. Doesn't look typically English, does it?
No, it doesn't.
The structure I loved was the pergola, and what I particularly liked about it was inside there's a bay tree, and if you like, the kind of the nerd in me was trying to work out, actually that's quite clever, but how do they trim it? That's going to be quite challenging to cut that because you've got the metal on top. You probably need some little munchkins, little gardening munchkins to sort of get up and snip away at it. Actually, maybe,
Yes.
Kathy, you could, get them up there.
Well, get me a safe ladder and I'll be up there trimming away.
You could stand on one of those.
Yes.
Yes.
The final stop on the tour is the foliage garden at the bottom.
This is lovely planting here, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Lots of foliage for you, Malcanthe. Look.
Yes. Look at that fern.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes.
Really
what is. This fern?
I'll tell you what I like. I think if you stand, I'm going to go and frolic with Pan here, but if you stand here and you look back, because you can see a bit of the house and the roof it's just pitched in a certain way, this could be somewhere in Tuscany. And it's lovely, there's vista all the way through.
Yes.
Come in, can I have a look? Can I have a look at it? Because it's really nice.
This has really, really been thought out and cleverly designed.
With the tour complete, the guests jot down their marks before Barbara and Marek make an appearance.
Hi there.
Hello.
Welcome to our garden.
Thank you.
Hello.
With pleasantries exchanged, Barbara and Marek's knowledge is put to the test.
I'm curious as to how you planned the herbaceous borders, because they're a real contrast, I think, to the rest of the garden.
We did want a contrast from the formal parts of the garden to have a lot of freedom with the borders. One rule, though, was to have, obviously, higher plants at the back and coming down, tumbling down to lower plants, aging the lawn at the front.
So that my main thing is about the foliage, and I noticed that there wasn't very much variegated foliage in the front of your garden, but there's such a lot at the back. Is there any reason for that?
We don't get a lot of sun down there. It's shady, so we can't get a lot of flowers.
Right.
So your interest is going to be in the foliage. But we've got spotty laurel.
Yes.
And we've got a variegated rhododendron, and all our fern collection is around there.
I've noticed that, and that I think is wonderful, especially the big dark leaves.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
So that's taken a few years to get to that sort of size.
The final area where Barbara and Marek can earn some points is by sharing a garden secret. The pride and joy of their planting scheme as you enter the garden is a constant spry climbing rose. The couple have made it a standout feature by adopting a strict regime of pruning and training. They want to show their guests how to tame the climber and encourage blooms throughout the summer.
The most important thing with a climber like Constance Spry is if you're going to get flowers at a lower level, you've got to bend her over into a lateral position, which will encourage flowers to flower along the lateral cane.
Whereas if you let it grow vertically, you'd find they're all at the top.
Marek and his assistant Nigel climb the ladders to show the other guests how to train the stems across so they produce blooms in view.
Next thing to do is to string our wire across. Nigel, give me the wire. Excellent.
Marek uses galvanised wire that won't rust in the rain.
This whole cane has grown this year, so we're going to use this one. It'll be a good healthy one. Right, now I'm going to push it back towards you, and I'd like you to secure it with your tag fairly close at the end. And I'm going to just twist this around here. Okay, that's looking good, Nigel, nice and straight. Look forward to a nice flush of roses along here next summer. Yeah.
the more climbing roses like Constance Spry are trained horizontally, the more flowers will be produced in view next year.
I thought it was a very efficient and informative demonstration. I did know it all, but I'm going to say that.
Before the winner of the Golden Trowel is announced, Barbara and Marek have a chance to read what their guests thought of their classically inspired garden.
What was your first impression on seeing the garden? Wow, wonderful. With lots of exclamation marks.
Wow,
that's really great. What do you think of the design and planting? Well executed and softened by almost cottage garden planting. Excellent parterre topiary.
Wow.
You all right?
With all the scores in, our London gardeners will now find out who will walk away with the Golden Trowel and £500. As the final host, Marek is master of ceremonies and begins proceedings by reading comments on all three gardens.
Malcanthian David's garden, full of variety with interesting colour combinations.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Edwina and Nigel, a subtle garden that combines scents, textures and soft colours.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Really
Thank
true.
you.
Barbara and Marek, a veritable Garden of Eden. Breathtaking. Oh my gosh. that is very kind. Thank you very much. So now we find out who the winner is, and the winner is Edwina and Nigel. Fantastic. That's wonderful. Absolutely.
Oh, totally.
That's really terrific. That's terrific. Absolutely great. There you go, Nigel. Fantastic. All that hard work you've done.
With the points tallied up, Edwina and Nigel won with a top score of 92. In second place, Barbara and Marek scored a respectable 86 points. Malcanthy and David were third with 81.5 points out of 100.
Nigel and Edwina are extremely deserving winners because they've moved away from the conventional and created a garden that is just theirs, and that takes courage to do as well.
The garden that won really showed what you could do with a smaller space, and the attention to detail that Edwina and Nigel showed was evident.
May I have the pleasure of presenting you with this golden trowel to tend your golden treasures.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Marek. Our sanctuary is a success.
It is.
Isn't that fantastic?
And it's more importantly a great place to be.
Yes, and other people enjoy being in it as well, and that's what's important.
I have been telling you that for a long time.
I know, but I never listen.
I know.
Over Britain and Ireland's garden fences lie some of our best-kept secrets.
Oh my goodness.
And the gardeners that tend them are a unique breed.
You can guarantee if you've got a big one, someone's got something a bit bigger.
In each episode of the series, 3 gardens will be explored and appraised.
We're looking at the lawn. Oh no.
I am green with envy.
And their owners will share their passion and knowledge with their peers.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a jacuzzi, isn't it?
Ultimately, they'll choose the garden they believe to be the best.
Just shooting the competition.
It's better than sex, isn't it?
You can't say that.
Welcome to London. The UK capital boasts over 3 million private gardens, and thanks to its very own microclimate, Londoners can grow tender, semi-tropical plants as well as the usual hardy species. But space in the urban jungle comes at a premium, So gardeners have to be creative and original with their green spaces. The sky-high Kensington Roof Gardens is an extravagant example of making the most of a tricky city plot, and Kew, home of the Royal Horticultural Society, has numerous displays of rare and spectacular flora. But how will our London gardeners fare with their own urban spaces? They'll be throwing their gates open to each other over 3 days, and will each hope to impress their guests and see their garden deemed the best. They'll judge garden design and maintenance, their host's knowledge and their overall experience of the day. The winner will take home £500 in prize money and the Show Me Your Garden Golden Trowel. The first garden is in Winchmore Hill, North London, and belongs to retired paediatrician Mal Canthi and her husband David.
My garden is like a canvas. The planting and the flowers are the